First, I want to thank you for being here. If you're watching this video now, you're either a meeting planner or someone planning the next event looking for the right person to speak on your stage. You know, what you're doing is really important. You're actually touching hundreds, if not thousands of lives and making a big difference. It's kind of a scary position to be in. You know, you either get the right person or the wrong person. You get the right person, you're celebrating through the roof and you say, yay, I deserve a raise, I'm doing awesome. You get the wrong one, you feel like, oh my God, I just hurt my audience, I didn't take care of them. I can totally relate. You know, you're probably wondering who I am. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lisa Lieberman-Wang, and I am the founder and author of the book F.I.N.E to Fab. I help people go from feeling fine, which is how I used to feel, which is effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, to being fab, fabulous, awesome, beautiful. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are out looking normal. They're going about their days, successful in some areas, but maybe not with themselves. And then privately, they're hurting themselves. And I can totally relate to that. If you would have looked at me even 20 years ago, you'd say, oh, she looks like she's doing awesome. She's doing great. And I did on the outside, but privately, I didn't think I was smart enough, rich enough, skinny enough. It didn't matter. I was never enough. And I'd use food to be able to make myself feel better. I had a dis-ease with myself. I have the privilege to help so many people today avoid years of shame, blame, and therapy and eliminate dis-ease by teaching them the 7 secrets of overcoming self-sabotage. And we do that by making it something that they can do immediately, quickly, and be able to create the results they want so they can live an authentic life, happy, healthy, and free. During the workshops I do, keynotes or breakouts, it's really about engaging the audience, not something that they have to give them a list of things to do and come back later and find out if they did it. We actually do it in person at that time so we can create the results at that moment for them to actually go from feeling fine to being fab. If you're looking for a speaker and you think I might be able to serve you and your audience, I'd love to be able to connect with you. Let's schedule a time to talk next week. Let's get on the calendar, and I'll look forward to helping us both create change and making the world a better place. Thank you.
And I knew that I couldn't be the only one looking for the solution, dealing with traditional therapy or self-help programs and not being able to get the results I wanted. Because of it, I started Neuro Associative Programming, where we can get rid of problems that took years. We can do it in weeks or months and not have to deal with shame, blame, and therapy for a lifetime.
You think that they're rejecting you. I was working with a woman who says to me, you know, sales, it's the name of the game. You get rejected a lot. I said, really? I have never been rejected in 30 years of sales. And she's like, wow, how can that be? I said, because they've never rejected me. They don't know me that well. They've rejected my product or my service. They're rejecting what I'm offering them. You do it all the time. If you've ever went to the store, you go to the restaurant and they say, would you like a drink? And you say no. Do they have to go to therapy for the next 10 years? But yet someone says no to you, and all of a sudden you shut down, that fear comes up, and you're no longer talking to anybody, and you just let that whole goal and dream go away.
You know, by the time you're 5 years old, 55% of your beliefs are already formed by well-meaning guardians and parents. They already told you what to believe. So think about some of the beliefs you might have had growing up. Maybe you believe that you know, you have to go to school and get a good education, especially if we're here, right? Maybe your belief was that you couldn't rely on other people. Maybe your belief was you should never trust somebody. But the truth is that there's no belief out there that can be proven. Because any belief you have has to be justified or explained to show it's true. So is it true? See, I know when I was growing up, they told me about the tooth fairy. Did anybody else hear about the tooth fairy? Yes. I found out when I got older there wasn't one. It was my parents. I was waiting for someone else to. I'm sorry, I didn't want to ruin it for you. But there wasn't a tooth fairy. And you know what? I thought about it. If they lied about that, what else did they lie about?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny. And what's in the middle of the word beliefs? Lie. So how many things have you been telling yourself that maybe are a lie? How many things were told to you that maybe were a lie? Maybe you were told that you're not smart enough. Who told you that?
Maybe it was a teacher that said to you in a class that you weren't smart enough. And then you went on your whole life and career thinking, I'm not smart enough. But out of 6.99999 billion people in the world, you listened to one person and you made that your belief that rooted your whole future. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about a young girl, and she happens to be one of my clients. And she was my first client. And when she came to me, some of her beliefs that she had when she was growing up was that she was never going to be skinny enough because her mother grew up being obese and always said to her, don't ever look like me. So her belief was she saw her mom always being ridiculed, having a hard time with flying. She needed an extra belt on the seat. You know, when you go to fly and you can't fit in the regular seat. Her family always giving her a hard time. So she equated being fat as being not loved. So she was told, you'll never look like me. So her belief is I need to be skinny. She also believed that, you know, problems, you know, everything was about her. See, she grew up in a house, a traditional dysfunctional family. You know any like that? Where everybody said a disparaging word. So nobody was nice. Her nickname by her father was AH, asshole. She had a disease when she was growing up. She had Turnstone disease. Everything she touched turned to shit. What kind of life do you think this girl grew up with? She didn't feel like she was good enough, couldn't do anything right, and her father wanted perfect children. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know any perfect children, but she thought she needed to be perfect, so she did everything in her power to do that. So when her tree started growing, her trunk was all about her values, all about being skinny. And then you had to be successful, and you had to be smart. And if you're smart and you do all these things, she's going to be loved. So she did everything in her power to do that. So she went to school, and she got good grades, and she was an honor student, and she got partial scholarships. I mean, everything you could ever imagine. But this big tree that looked so big and strong was actually really weak. Because through that, she found that in order to be perfect, she had to do everything and be everything for everyone, never pleased anyone, including herself. So she ended up getting sick. She ended up dealing with ulcers. It was while she was in college. And the doctor went home, told her to go home and said, he said, just don't be stressed. Now, anybody here ever go to college? We're in Harvard, right? Don't be stressed. Do you think there's a little stress in college? So she went home and listened to what the doctor said, but she was also interning with IBM at the time. She was teaching dance at Arthur Murray. She was pretty much stressed. So one day she's with her dad, and her dad liked to ride his motorcycle, and he was very much about safety, so he put on the leather jacket on her, put on the helmet, and as she's getting on the back of his bike, she falls. And he realizes there's a problem. He rushes her to the hospital and finds she had a sudden heart attack. And as they're rushing her in on the gurney, he turns to her and says, I love you. And at that moment, it was the first time I ever heard my dad say, I love you. Because that story, that little girl was me. And there was a lesson learned and a belief formed at that moment that if you're sick, they're nice to you. It's a new belief. Became a new root. And because of that, I ended up staying sick for 13 years, was hospitalized 5 times over 6 months. I developed an eating disorder. I was about 30 pounds lighter than I am now. I was bulimic to the point where they didn't know what to do with bulimics back then, 30 years ago. So they ended up putting me in a psychiatric ward with people that had serious challenges that needed to be there. but they didn't know what it was. What they didn't know and what I never shared is that when I was 16 years old, because I had such a low self-esteem, I had put myself in a situation that I probably would never have put myself in today knowing, and I dated an older boy who took advantage of me. But this was a secret I kept because my beliefs is I needed to be perfect. And if I wasn't, they wouldn't love me. Despite that, there was another belief that I had that was so strong, is I needed to be successful. Because if I wasn't successful, they wouldn't love me. So that was part of my purpose, was to be successful, my driven why. So I was, despite all that. I ended up starting my first business at 23. When I was working in corporate, I was one of the top salespeople in the world for MCI. I was a millionaire at 30. But I spent as much money trying to get well as I did that I made. So what is the price we pay based on the beliefs we tell ourselves, the things we do? So if your goal in life is just to make money, you might want to rethink your goal, because it's so much more than the money.
Right? At the end of the day, everything comes down to two things. I'm not enough, and if I'm not enough, I won't be loved. At the end of the day, those two things is what we all stand for. Every human being, no matter who you listen to, no matter who study, you listen to Freud or this one or that one, it all comes down to I'm not enough, and if I'm not enough, I won't be loved. That's the bottom line. For people that are perfectionists, it comes down to if I'm perfect, I do it perfectly, I won't be embarrassed. If I do it perfect, nobody will tell me I'm doing something wrong. Does this make sense? So perfection becomes a way to avoid shame and blame. And one of the things I found totally fascinating about language, neurology is how our brain works, and linguistic, how our language associates with it, and how we program our thoughts, is that we literally program ourselves for good or bad. So every time you say disempowering words, your mind does not know the difference from false or fiction and truth. It doesn't know the difference between fiction and truth. So if you tell it something, it believes you. It takes 20 positive statements to counteract one negative. So if you say to yourself, oh, I'm so stupid, you need 20 good things to make that cancel. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to sit and you're going to say, like, I'm not good enough. You're going to go, who said that? You're going to jump out of your seat. You're going to what? Jump out of your seat. And you're going to say, who said that?
I'm going to jump up after and look at the chair and say, who said that? Ready? Say it out loud now.
Who said that?
Great job. Do it again. That was awesome. That was awesome. Do it again now. Okay. So now you have another strategy.
How much better do you feel, like just moving and everything else? Realize that transformation happens with movement. If you're like this, what are you? Stiff. Well, what happens most people that are stiff? They're dead. You're stiff, you're dead.
I'm going to say it again. None of these fears exist. They're all made up. And the reason I tell you that is because there are only two innate fears that we're born with. And that is fear of falling and fear of loud noises. And they're there to protect us. Any other fear you have, you made up. So your fears are either being destructive or constructive. You can use your fears to push you forward, or you can use them to keep you back. It's your choice. Which would you like? Forward. So never seek career advice from your fears. Not a good counselor, okay? So let's change the definition of fear, and let's call it face everything and rise above it. What is it? Absolutely. So when you fear and you're worried about something, instead of making it stop you, take that fear and make it your reason to do it anyway. Because you know it's made up. You know it's something you put in your head that you got it so big that you're missing the point of all the great things you want.
Hand, find a free hand. I want you to high five the person next to you and say, I'm going to learn something today.
your unconscious and conscious mind. This is why you do what you do. And I really wish someone taught me this like 40 years ago instead of just 30. So here's what happens. Let's look at this. Do you remember the expression, you went to school, you heard the tip of the iceberg from Freud, the iceberg model? They say it's the tip of the iceberg, right? Well, what's the tip? The tip is your conscious mind. It's only 10% of what you do. It's what you see. Okay, it's the behaviors that how you're acting. That's the tree, by the way. That's the thing you do to prove to yourself that belief that wasn't working. You with me? Okay, awesome. So now what happens is you have the unconscious mind here. Well, the challenge is, let's talk about the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is the ship that steers everything you do. That has to do with the strategies that you've created to be able to be successful and do what you do. It has to do with the habits that you do, why you do things the way you do it, how you do it, all the other things. The I are the impulses or the emotions. It's the emotions that you do. Emotions are energy in motion. Why you get upset about things, why you're excited about other things. It has everything to do with what's driving you based on your attitudes and beliefs and values. That tree I showed you is all under here. That's your unconscious mind, okay? It's what's been working. Then we have your physiological control. Do you know that just by your emotions handling them, you can control your blood pressure? You can control your cholesterol? You can control your heart, no strokes, no heart attacks. We have total control if we believe. But if we're lying to ourselves the wrong way, our unconscious will believe whatever we tell it to, so you have to be careful what you tell it. So here's your ship, and then what happens is that person who believes they're not smart enough, they'll turn around and look for ways to prove it. You know, I just was working on a project at work, and I didn't get it the way that the manager wanted it. Oh, there's something wrong with me. So then we go to this thing called HALT. Okay? HALT stands for, can you read it out loud with me? Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. When you get hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we need to halt, stop what we're doing. But here's what most people do. You get frustrated, you don't know what's going on, you really don't know how to deal with it because you didn't get the right resources, or if somebody said the training, right, to know what to do. So what you might do is you get hungry, or maybe you just ate now, and then something happens in an hour, and all of a sudden you're hungry, but you're not hungry for food. But instead of asking yourself the question, what am I hungry for? You're really hungry for the right answer, for the solution, maybe a hug. You might go for food. Does that make sense? So when we get hungry, or when we get angry, somebody gets us upset and we get angry, or lonely, you know, sometimes we're human beings. If you didn't notice that, we need each other. You know, you get lonely, you want companionship. I don't mean just a mate. I mean friends and people in your life, right? Or tired. How many people work themselves into the point of like hitting that brick wall and you crash? Right? Right? You know, and that comes probably, and I'm gonna hallucinate that you might be a perfectionist too, that you want everything right because you'll keep going until you get it. Would that be close? Okay, so what happens is she'll get to the point for being so, instead of halting and stopping what you're doing, here's the fun part. This is how your brain works. I think it's so cool. It says halt, and here's what happens. You're saying, no, I can do it, right? And then it goes and talks to your conscious mind, which is your war. That's your willpower, analytical, and rational part, okay? And it wages a war. And it says, I know I need to stop. I know I'm so tired. I know I need to stop. But you go, but I got to get this done. And if I don't get it done, I'm going to end up having this. And I won't have more hours. I won't be able to do this. And you have this whole thing. You rationalize and you justify. And you go through all this stuff. And then you get it done. But it's never even where you wanted it to be. And then you crash. So you just waged a war. You see this? You waged a war on yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. This is how, unfortunately, most people work.
This is why we do what we do. You need to understand why you do what you do. Because what happens is if you don't understand the foundation, the expression is the tip of the iceberg, right? So if you were to see an iceberg, you only see this. Now, you meet someone on the street, you don't know anything about them, and you see that they're jumping up and down and they're totally acting crazy, and you'll make a judgment about that person, knowing nothing about them other than they're jumping up and down, they're crazy, but you don't know why. You don't know what's driving them, you don't know what the beliefs are, you don't know where they came from, you don't know what happened to them, you don't know what made them do that, but you'll put a judgment on only what you see. People will do that about you too, don't you think?